What if I told you that Jesus didn't just teach love and forgiveness, but left behind a hidden practice so powerful that it could collapse the boundaries between you and the infinite source of all creation? A ritual so simple, taking only 5 minutes, yet so profound that the early mystics guarded it like the most precious treasure in existence. Tonight, you stand at the threshold of something that has been concealed for 2,000 years, hidden in plain sight within the very words attributed to the Master himself. Before we begin this journey together, I want you to do something right now. Type these words in the comments. I am ready to return to the source. Don't just type it mechanically. Feel it. Let those words resonate in the deepest chamber of your being. And if this video has already stirred something ancient within you, hit that like button, because what you're about to discover isn't just information. It's a key that's been waiting for you across lifetimes. The monad, the one, the indivisible unity from which all existence flows and to which all existence returns. The Gnostic Christians spoke of it in whispers. The mystics of every tradition have pointed toward it with trembling fingers. But what they rarely revealed was the method, the actual practice that Jesus himself may have used to pierce the veil between the individual soul and the infinite consciousness. This wasn't written in the Gospels, you know. It was too dangerous, too transformative, too capable of awakening something in humanity that threatened the structures of control and fear. Tonight, you're not just learning about ancient wisdom. You're being handed a direct transmission, a practice so elegantly simple that you can perform it in your bedroom, in complete silence, in just 5 minutes. Yet within those 5 minutes lies the potential to experience what the mystics called kenosis, union with the One, what Jesus himself might have accessed in those 40 days in the wilderness. This isn't theory. This isn't philosophy for the sake of intellectual stimulation. This is a doorway, and I'm going to show you exactly how to walk through it before you go to sleep tonight. In the year 1945, in the desert cliffs near Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a peasant farmer struck his mattock against something hard beneath the sand. What he unearthed that day would shatter everything the world thought it knew about early Christianity. 13 leather-bound codices containing 52 texts, most of which had been lost for over 16 centuries. Among them was the Gospel of Thomas, the secret book of John, and texts that spoke of a Jesus radically different from the one presented in canonical scripture. This wasn't a Jesus who came merely to die for sins. This was a Jesus who came to awaken humanity to its divine origin, to remind us that we are not separate from God, but emanations of the very source itself. The Gnostic Christians understood something profound. They taught that between humanity and the ultimate God, the monad, there existed layers of reality, spiritual hierarchies, and that Jesus came not as a sacrificial lamb, but as a revealer of the path back to the One. The word monad comes from the Greek monos, meaning unity or singularity. In Gnostic cosmology, the monad is the absolute, unknowable, ineffable source of all existence. It is beyond being and non-being, beyond light and darkness, beyond all dualities. It simply is, and from its mysterious depths, all worlds, all souls, all consciousness emerges like waves from an infinite ocean. Plotinus, the great Neoplatonist philosopher who lived in the 3rd century, spoke of the monad as the One, from which the divine mind and the world soul emanate. But here's what most scholars miss. Plotinus was documenting practices that predated him by centuries, techniques that allowed the mystic to reverse the flow of emanation, to trace consciousness back upstream to its source. The early Christian mystics, the Desert Fathers and Mothers, the Gnostic adepts, they weren't just praying in the way we understand prayer today. They were performing specific internal operations, precise adjustments of attention and awareness that created openings in consciousness itself. When Jesus spoke in the Gospel of Thomas, saying, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will kill you," he wasn't speaking metaphorically. He was pointing to a literal practice, a method of accessing the divine spark, the pneuma, that exists at the core of every human being. This spark is not separate from the monad. It is the monad, experiencing itself through the lens of individuality, temporarily forgetting its infinite nature, so that it might know itself through the adventure of limitation. The ritual I'm about to share with you tonight has been reconstructed from fragments scattered across multiple traditions. It appears in veiled form in the Corpus Hermeticum, the Egyptian wisdom texts that influenced early Christianity. It echoes through the hesychast practices of Eastern Orthodox monks who sought theosis, union with God, through specific breathing techniques and internal prayer. It resonates with descriptions found in the Pistis Sophia, where Jesus reveals to his disciples the mysteries of ascending through the archonic spheres back to the treasury of light. But most significantly, it aligns perfectly with the state Jesus himself describes in the Gospel of John when he says, "I and the Father are one." This wasn't a claim of unique divinity. It was a description of a state of consciousness that he was inviting everyone to enter. To understand what this 5-minute ritual actually accomplishes, you must first grasp the nature of the barrier that separates you from the monad. This barrier isn't a wall built by God to keep you out. It's a veil woven from your own attention, constructed moment by moment through the habitual patterns of thought, identification, and the relentless belief that you are merely this body, this personality, this story moving through time. The mystics called this veil by many names: Maya in the Eastern traditions, the demiurge's illusion in Gnostic teaching, the world of forms in Platonic philosophy. But regardless of the terminology, the mechanism is always the same. Imagine consciousness as an infinite ocean, perfectly still, perfectly unified. Now imagine that ocean developing the capacity to create ripples, waves, and whirlpools within itself. Each whirlpool believes it is separate from the ocean. It experiences itself as an individual entity, fighting to maintain its form, terrified that if it releases its spinning motion, it will cease to exist. But here's the profound truth. The whirlpool was never separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, temporarily expressing itself in a particular pattern. The ritual Jesus practiced is the art of allowing the whirlpool to remember it is water, without the whirlpool actually disappearing. You remain you, but you simultaneously awaken to the fact that you are also the infinite. The human being exists as a bridge between worlds. Your physical body connects you to matter, to the dense reality of form. Your soul, what the Gnostics called the psyche, animates that body and experiences emotions, desires, and the drama of personal existence. But at your deepest core lies the pneuma, the spirit, the divine spark that is literally a fragment of the monad itself, like a ray of light that has never actually left the sun, even though it illuminates a distant room. The 5-minute ritual creates what ancient practitioners called the alignment of the three. Body, soul, and spirit coming into a singular harmonic resonance. When Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days, or when he withdrew to mountains to pray through the night, he wasn't making requests to an external deity. He was performing a specific operation of consciousness. He was systematically withdrawing his attention from every external stimulus, every internal thought, every emotional current, until only pure awareness remained. In that state of pure awareness, without content, without object, consciousness recognizes itself as the monad recognizing itself. The perceiver, the perceived, and the act of perception collapse into a singular experience of undivided being. But here's where it gets practically important for you tonight. You don't need 40 days in the wilderness. You don't need to retreat to a mountain cave. The mystics discovered something extraordinary. The threshold between ordinary consciousness and monadic awareness is always only one breath away. The distance isn't measured in time or space or years of discipline. It's measured in the quality of attention you bring to a single moment. Jesus condensed this wisdom into a practice that could be performed anywhere, by anyone, regardless of their level of spiritual development. It's not about being worthy. It's not about being pure enough or knowledgeable enough. It's about being willing to stop, to turn attention inward, and to follow a precise sequence that gradually releases every knot that binds consciousness to the illusion of separation. The ritual operates on what the Hermetic texts called the principle of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. Your breath is not just air moving through lungs. It's the physical manifestation of spirit itself. The same breath, the same ruach or pneuma that God breathed into Adam. By working with breath in a specific way, you work directly with the substance of consciousness. Your attention is not just a mental function. It's the very mechanism by which the monad experiences itself through you. By directing attention in a particular sequence, you create an opening, a portal, through which the finite self can experience its infinite ground. Think of it like this. Imagine you're watching a movie, completely absorbed in the story, identifying with the characters, feeling their joys and sorrows as your own. Then suddenly, you remember that you're sitting in a theater, that the screen is just light and shadow, and that you, the awareness watching the movie, were never actually in danger, never actually limited to that story. The movie continues to play, but your relationship to it fundamentally shifts. You're simultaneously in the story and free from it. This is precisely what the monad ritual accomplishes. You remain yourself, your personality continues, your life circumstances don't magically transform, but your relationship to all of it shifts so profoundly that the ancient mystics said you become dead to the world while still living in it. The most closely guarded secret of the ancient mystery schools was this. The monad is not somewhere else. It's not in a distant heaven or a far-off spiritual realm that you must journey toward through years of arduous practice. The monad is the very ground of your being right now, in this moment, closer to you than your own breath, more intimate than your own thoughts. The only reason you don't experience it continuously is because your attention has been trained, conditioned, hypnotized into focusing exclusively on the surface movements of consciousness, while ignoring the vast depth from which those movements arise. When the Gnostic texts speak of archons, those planetary rulers and cosmic gatekeepers that seem to prevent the soul's ascent back to the pleroma, the fullness of divine light, they're not describing literal demonic entities floating in space. They're describing psychological structures, patterns of conditioning, layers of false identity that consciousness has accumulated through its descent into matter. The archon of fear tells you that dissolution equals death. The archon of desire chains you to the endless pursuit of satisfaction through external things. The archon of judgment creates the illusion that you must earn your way back to God through moral perfection. Each of these is a guardian at a gate, and each must be passed not through battle, but through recognition of its illusory nature. Jesus understood something that most spiritual traditions either forgot or deliberately obscured. You don't climb your way to the monad through effort. You don't accumulate enough virtue, enough knowledge, enough spiritual power to finally breach the gates of heaven. Instead, you perform what the mystics called the great reversal. You stop moving outward and begin moving inward. You stop adding and begin subtracting. You stop becoming and begin recognizing what you have always been. This is why Jesus said, "Unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." A child hasn't yet built the elaborate fortress of identity that adults inhabit. A child's consciousness still flows freely, still experiences wonder at existence itself, still hasn't learned to separate the observer from the observed. The 5-minute ritual that Jesus practiced operates through 3 distinct phases, each corresponding to a level of consciousness that must be traversed. The first phase addresses the body and its endless chatter of sensation, discomfort, restlessness. The body constantly pulls attention toward its needs, its pleasures, its pains, keeping consciousness trapped in identification with physical form. The second phase addresses the soul, the emotional and mental currents that create the sense of being a person with a history, with desires, with fears about the future, and regrets about the past. The third phase addresses the spirit itself, that final subtle boundary between the individual sense of I am and the universal recognition of I am, without object, without limitation, without division. Here's what makes this ritual different from ordinary meditation or prayer. It's not a practice of concentration where you force your mind to focus on a single object. That approach often creates more tension, more effort, more sense of a separate self trying to achieve a spiritual state. Instead, this is a practice of recognition and release. You're not trying to create the experience of unity with the monad. You're removing the obstacles that prevent you from noticing that unity is already the case. It's like cleaning a window that's become so dirty you forgot you were looking through glass. You're not creating the view. You're removing what obscured it. The mystics discovered that consciousness has a natural tendency, a gravitational pull, toward its source. Just as water flows downhill, just as heat rises, consciousness naturally returns to the monad when you stop actively preventing it from doing so. Every thought that you chase, every emotion that you cling to or resist, every sensation that you identify with creates a kind of turbulence that keeps consciousness circling at the surface level of awareness. The moment you stop creating that turbulence, even for a few minutes, consciousness begins to settle, to sink, to descend into its own depths until it reaches what the mystics called the ground of being, the still point at the center of existence where your individual awareness and the infinite awareness of the monad are recognized as one and the same. But there's a paradox here that you must understand. When consciousness touches the monad, when that moment of recognition occurs, there's no you there to experience it in the ordinary sense. The experiencer and the experience become one. This is why mystics throughout history have struggled to describe what happens in that state. It's not that you feel blissful, though profound peace often arises afterward. It's not that you see divine light, though visions sometimes accompany the approach to this state. It's that the entire structure of subject and object temporarily dissolves. You can't report back that I experienced union with God because in that moment there was no I separate from God to do the experiencing. This is what Jesus meant when he spoke of losing your life to find it, dying to be reborn, releasing the grain of wheat into the earth so it can multiply into the harvest. The ancient teachers knew that this experience changes you permanently. Even a single moment of touching the monad leaves an indelible mark on consciousness. It's as if you've tasted something so exquisitely real that everything else afterward seems like a shadow in comparison. Your desires don't disappear, but they lose their compulsive grip. Your fears don't vanish, but they no longer define you. Your sense of self continues, but it becomes transparent, flexible, no longer the solid prison it once seemed. This is the true meaning of salvation, not being rescued from hell after death, but being liberated from the hell of separation and isolation while you're still breathing, still walking this earth. Now we arrive at the heart of what you've been waiting for, the actual ritual itself, the precise sequence that can open the doorway between your individual consciousness and the infinite monad. Before you begin tonight, understand that this is not a performance. This is not something you do correctly or incorrectly in the conventional sense. This is an invitation you extend to your own deepest nature, a permission you grant yourself to remember what you truly are. Set aside your expectations of fireworks and cosmic visions. The most profound experiences are often the quietest, the most subtle, the most easily overlooked if you're hunting for something dramatic. Choose a time tonight when you won't be disturbed, preferably before sleep, when the mind naturally begins to release its grip on the concerns of the day. Sit in a comfortable position where your spine is relatively straight, but not rigidly held. You can sit on a chair, on your bed, on the floor. The position matters far less than your intention. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths, not forced or exaggerated, but fuller than your normal breathing. With each exhale, consciously release the tension you're holding in your shoulders, your jaw, your belly. You're signaling to your entire system that it's safe to let go, that for these 5 minutes, nothing in the external world requires your attention or protection. The first phase, lasting approximately 90 seconds, is the grounding of the body. Begin breathing naturally through your nose and place your attention on the sensation of breath entering and leaving your nostrils. Don't try to control the breath. Simply observe it with curiosity, as if you're discovering breathing for the first time. Notice the coolness of the inhale, the warmth of the exhale. When your mind wanders, and it will wander dozens of times, simply return your attention to the breath without judgment, without frustration. Each time you notice you've wandered and return, you are actually performing the essential movement of the practice. You are training attention to disengage from its habitual patterns and rest in direct sensory experience. As you continue, you may notice your breath naturally slowing, becoming more refined. Allow this. Your body is beginning to remember its original stillness. The second phase, lasting approximately 2 minutes, addresses the soul and its endless stream of thoughts and emotions. Keeping your eyes closed, gently shift your attention from the breath to the space of awareness itself, in which thoughts appear and disappear. Imagine you're sitting in a movie theater, and thoughts are images on the screen. Instead of being absorbed in the content of the thoughts, become interested in the screen itself, the awareness that remains constant regardless of what appears on it. When a thought arises, and thousands will arise, don't fight it, don't follow it, don't analyze it. Simply notice it the way you'd notice a cloud passing through the sky. There's a thought about tomorrow. There's a memory from yesterday. There's a judgment about this practice. Each time you notice without engaging, you're loosening the identification with mental content. You're discovering that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear, like waves appearing in the ocean, never separate from the ocean itself. Here's the crucial instruction that most teachings omit. If strong emotions arise during this phase, sadness, fear, restlessness, even unexpected joy, treat them exactly as you treat thoughts. Don't push them away, but don't dive into their story either. Feel the raw sensation of the emotion in your body without the narrative that usually accompanies it. Where do you feel sadness? Is it a heaviness in the chest? A constriction in the throat? By experiencing emotion as pure sensation, stripped of its story, you're allowing the energy to move through you rather than storing it as another layer of conditioning. The archons begin to lose their power when you stop feeding them your attention. The third phase, lasting approximately 90 seconds, is the approach to the monad itself. Now you shift attention to what the Desert Fathers called the prayer of the heart. Silently, in rhythm with your natural breathing, repeat these words internally. I am. On the inhale, think I. On the exhale, think AM. Don't try to visualize anything. Don't try to feel anything particular. Simply let these two words become the entire content of your awareness. I am. I am. I am. At first, this will feel like a mental exercise, words you're thinking. But as you continue, something shifts. The words begin to dissolve into the reality they point toward. You're no longer thinking, I am. You're resting in the direct experience of being itself, of existence without qualification, without definition, without boundaries. This is the same awareness that Jesus invoked when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." He wasn't making a statement about his personal age. He was speaking from the timeless awareness that is the ground of all existence, the monad experiencing itself through a human form named Jesus. In these final 90 seconds, you may experience a moment, perhaps just a flash, where all sense of separation dissolves. There's no you here anymore, no God there. There's just this, just being. Just the infinite presence that has no edges, no center, no definition. If this happens, don't grasp at it. Don't try to make it last. The moment you try to capture it, the separate self reasserts itself, and the experience ends. Instead, simply let it pass through like everything else, knowing that what you glimpsed was always present and will always be present, waiting beneath the surface of every moment. After 5 minutes, gently open your eyes. Don't rush back into ordinary consciousness. Sit for another minute, allowing the experience to integrate. You may feel a profound stillness, or you may feel nothing particularly special. Both are perfectly valid. The work has been done at a level deeper than your conscious mind can immediately recognize. Some nights the ritual will feel powerful and alive. Other nights it will feel dry and mechanical. Practice anyway. Consistency matters more than intensity. Do this ritual every night before sleep for 21 days and observe what begins to shift in your waking life. You're not trying to achieve permanent enlightenment. You're simply touching base with your source, reminding yourself of what you are beneath all the stories, all the roles, all the endless becoming. You now hold in your hands what the mystics once protected with their very lives, what Jesus himself may have used to maintain his unwavering connection to the source, even in the darkest hours of his mission. This 5-minute ritual is not a relic of ancient history, meant to be admired from a distance. It's a living technology of consciousness, as relevant and powerful tonight as it was 2,000 years ago, in the deserts of Judea, in the caves of Egypt, in the hidden chambers where the early Christians gathered to share the secret teachings that never made it into official doctrine. Understand that what you've received here is both utterly simple and infinitely profound. The ego loves complexity because complexity allows it to postpone transformation indefinitely. I need to study more, understand more, prepare more before I'm ready. But the monad doesn't require your readiness. It doesn't demand your perfection. It simply waits, patiently, eternally, for that moment when you stop running, stop seeking, stop performing, and simply allow yourself to sink into the ground of being that has held you since before time began. Tonight, before you sleep, you have the opportunity to accept that invitation. 5 minutes, that's all? 5 minutes to remember what you've spent a lifetime forgetting. The transformation this practice brings doesn't announce itself with thunder and lightning. It works quietly, like water slowly reshaping stone, like roots gradually breaking through concrete. You may not notice anything dramatic after your first session or your 10th. But if you remain faithful to this practice, you'll begin to observe subtle shifts. Situations that once triggered intense reaction begin to lose their emotional charge. The grip of fear loosens, not because you've conquered it, but because you've discovered something deeper than fear, something that fear cannot touch. The hunger for external validation softens because you've tasted a fulfillment that doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion or approval. This is how the kingdom of heaven grows within you, not like a sudden revolution, but like the slow, inevitable dawn that transforms darkness without violence, without force. When Jesus taught his disciples, he spoke in parables to the crowds, but revealed the mysteries plainly to those who were ready to receive them. You've received such a mystery tonight. The question now is not whether this practice works. Thousands of mystics across centuries have proven its efficacy. The question is whether you'll honor what you've been given by actually doing it. Knowledge without application is just entertainment, just another story to add to your collection of spiritual concepts. But knowledge applied, even imperfectly, becomes the key that opens the door between who you think you are and who you truly are. Before you close this video, I want you to make a commitment, not to me, but to yourself. Tonight, before you surrender to sleep, give yourself these 5 minutes. Approach the practice with sincerity, but without pressure. You're not trying to achieve anything. You're simply showing up, creating space, opening a door. The monad will do the rest. It's been waiting for you, calling to you through every moment of longing, every experience of beauty, every quiet whisper in your heart that there must be something more than this endless cycle of desire and disappointment. Type in the comments what you experienced after you try this ritual tonight. Share your journey, your questions, your insights. This community is more than just viewers. We're fellow travelers on the path home, each supporting the others through the simple act of witnessing and acknowledging the journey. If this video has stirred something ancient within you, if you feel that recognition of truth that transcends intellectual understanding, share it with someone who needs to hear this message. The awakening of one contributes to the awakening of all, because at the deepest level, we are all waves in the same infinite ocean. The monad is not somewhere you're going. It's what you are, right now, beneath every layer of conditioning, every identity, every story you've ever told yourself. Tonight, you don't need to believe me. You don't need to have faith in ancient texts or mystical traditions. Simply try the practice and discover for yourself what the mystics discovered, what Jesus knew and taught to those with ears to hear. The veil between you and infinite consciousness is thinner than you've ever imagined. 5 minutes, one breath, one moment of absolute presence. That's all it takes to begin remembering what you've always been. Go now. The monad awaits, not in some distant heaven, but in the very core of your being, closer than your own heartbeat, more intimate than your next breath. This is not the end of a video. This is the beginning of your return home.